For more than 60 years, Bill Hennes has lived at the heart of American radio. He started where so many legends did, behind the microphone, known to listeners as the high energy Wild Willie. From there, he moved into programming, helping define top 40 radio in major markets across the country. And along the way, Hennes became one of the industry's most respected program directors and consultants, working with iconic stations and guiding broadcasters through decades of change. Then, as radio evolved, of course, Bill was there to evolve with it, embracing new formats, new technologies, and eventually the digital era. We're going to reflect on the moments that shaped your career, Bill, and the lessons learned from a lifetime in broadcasting, and why radio's past still matters as the industry looks ahead. So, welcome, Bill Hennes, to the USA Radio Museum. Great to see you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Jim.
Well, you've lived really through every major era of modern radio. So, you look back, and what period do you think most profoundly shaped the medium?
Well, I think that radio's transition, it started in the mid 50s. That's when radio, as we know it today, really took grasp. And now I got involved with this radio business back with a fellow named Mickey Shore in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
And for those who don't know, Mickey Shore at WXYZ, he was the big nighttime DJ in that era. And I started out early, as a lot of people in radio did. We all had our own little radio stations at home before we got into the business. And I had one with a Bogan mixer and turntables, an Electro Voice mic, and I had a pretend radio station. That's how it all started. And then when I entered a contest that Mickey Shore had at WXYZ, and I went to visit him to get my prize of winning the contest that he had. And he said to me, he says, we were talking about music, and he said, boy, he says, you really know this music. And I said, I was like 15 years old. And so he all of a sudden put me in charge of meeting with all the record promoters that were bringing the music in.
And you were only 15 years old.
I was only 15 years old at that time. And so all the record promoters had to come and see me. I don't know. Do you know Sammy Kaplan?
Sure do.
Okay, well, Sammy Kaplan, who I talk to periodically. Anyway, he was a record promoter, and he would come in, and one of them, and he'd play his wares and his music, and then I'd listen to them and tell Mickey what I thought, and that's how it all started. And then after that, I was looking to get some actual airtime. And I went out to a station owned by a great radio station owner, Milt Maltz. And that was at WBRB in Mount Clemens, Michigan. And I did part-time out at WBRB in Mount Clemens for about 2 years.
And this station was really just outside of Detroit, the suburbs of Detroit, pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
Macomb County, right, a suburb of Detroit, correct. And then after I did that, one of the guys who had a similar thing that I had, a phony radio station in the basement, he wound up. His father passed away, unfortunately, and left him $50K. And he and his mother went over to my father's office, who was a lawyer in Dearborn, Michigan, and they wanted to buy a station. And my dad did some research and found out that Henry Mancini had a station license for sale in Lincoln Park, Michigan.
Wow.
And he got the license, he put it on the air, and then I started. He hired me once it got on the air. He hired me to do morning drive on WLIN, which was called Downriver Radio. It actually is WCAR today.
Hmm. I
You
didn't know
you will
that.
remember CAR, I'm sure.
Yeah, I worked
And
there. Yeah.
yeah, I know, That's why I mentioned it. But that's they wound up buying, moving the license over there, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how all of that started.
You know, what's
And then
interesting, Bill, just to interrupt for a second, is that,
no,
like you say, so many young broadcasters started doing something in their bedroom or wherever where they could, put together some equipment. I think I had the same equipment that you did, the Bogan, but I went one step
yep,
further. I bought one of those little FM radio transmitter kits that you could
yep,
get back in the 60s, and I would
yep,
broadcast from my house to my neighbor's house across the street, So, but you
yep.
actually
The 10
you
watt
were able to,
transmitter, right?
you were able to, yeah, you were able to move it up pretty quickly because of your experience with WXYZ, and then of course on the air in Macomb County. So that's amazing, and that you were able to leverage that, I'm sure, to move on and build your career from there. Because where did you go after the WLIN experience? You were doing mornings there, I know, and
Yeah, well, the WLIN thing, after they ran into a little problem. David forgot one thing, that he had to sell advertising,
you
and
ran out of
he
money.
couldn't pay the talent. And by the way, that WLIN had some great broadcasters there. Ron Rose, who you know, I'm sure,
Yeah.
he was on that staff. And I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. He
Ed
became a
Bush
jazz, huh? Ed
Ed
Bush.
Bush was there from
Yep,
CKLW later.
yep. And what's the? I can't remember. There was a guy who did jazz, and he went to WJR, and I can't remember his name. But at any rate, after I finished working at WLIN, he ran out of money. Um, I, picked up Broadcasting Magazine, and I said, "Hey, where can I go? I'm looking for a gig," and I found one in Kankakee, Illinois, and that's WKAN in Kankakee, Illinois, and it was
So
an
wait a
AM
second. Let
station.
me just I got to hear the break for that station. How would you do the break for that radio station? The ID.
WKAN, Kankakee, Illinois. And what was great about
Kankakee.
Jim, what was great about that station was it was not top 40. It was just a community radio station. And I had to go out to all the different news police stations. I had to get the news. I had to come back and write it. And then I would do that in between my music show and everything
Wow.
at the station. So that was really a great training ground, because I never had to do that before. And now after Kankakee, and it was very good. It was for me. It was a little bit of a problem. My mother was visiting me in Kankakee, and she passed away there. So I
Hmm.
had a very sad time, and I wanted to get out of town and get somewhere else. And what I did is, when I go back to WLIN, the program director there who had lost his job at LIN because of no money, and he had gone on to WJEF in Grand Rapids. And I happened to contact him, and he said, "Bill," he says, "we have an opening here. I'd like you to come in and do mornings." So I left Kankakee and I went into WJEF in Grand Rapids, which was a great thing for me because I didn't realize it was in the Pantland Hotel in Grand Rapids. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
No. No.
And and so what he did is he put me on the morning show, and it was a great experience because in that market at time, that was 1963, the great program consultant Mike Joseph was putting on WLAV in Grand Rapids, making it top 40. And I used to go down and have breakfast at the Panlin Hotel. And he was there for like about 3 months. And I met him down there and he said, well, let's have breakfast every morning. Breakfast or lunch, whatever. Let's get together at once a day. So I was able to pick the brains of one of the great program consultants of all time. And then after I finished that particular assignment, I was looking for work. Again, I was looking for another job, and I saw there was an ad for WTAC in Flint, looking for a night jock. So I sent the air check, and I got a call, and they said, "Yeah, we'd like you to come, and can you start on I don't know, 2 weeks or whatever?" And I said, "Sure." So I gave my notice there. And the next thing I know, when I called them on Friday before the Monday, they said, whoops, that job's no longer available. So there I was, a disc jockey out of work. And again, I started to research what I could find and where I could go. And I saw an ad, they were looking for a nighttime disc jockey in Jackson, Michigan, at a station called WIBM. I think you may remember that one, Jim.
Sure.
You know that one? Anyway, that was my first radio show where I became Wild Willie. And I was having a lot of fun doing the night show. And then they eventually moved me up to afternoon drive. And it was a really good stay. I really enjoyed that. It was the first time that I really had a good time on the radio.
Well, when you were Wild Willie, of course, that's when I met you. I was working in Flint at the same time, and we used to have lunch a lot and get together
Yep.
and talk on the phone and so forth. And you were a big deal in Flint. I mean, the WTAC was a big station. It had a huge signal. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And so, you have such an extensive career. So I'm going to just try to get the highlights. But when did you? Well, you took that Wild Willie on the road. Actually, you went to Louisville with that, right? At WKLO.
Yes, that's correct. And that was the very first time that I ever talked long time with a program director. I had sent a tape to Terrell Matheny,
Mm-hmm.
who was the program director at that time at WKLO. And he called me back and we talked for must have been an hour and a half.
Huh.
And I'd never talked to a program director that in depth, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was great. And he hired me on the spot to go to WKLO in Louisville as Wild Willie. And it was really a great opportunity for me. I really enjoyed Louisville very much. It was a
Beautiful city.
great,
Yeah.
yeah, great city, great operation. And then while I was there, Terrell was doing afternoons and I was doing nights. Uh, I'm trying to remember. There was a story, that happened when I was doing that show. I was there the very first week in Louisville at KLO, and I had a thing that pick and play. And back in that time, stations were doing call in, pick and play, pick a song, we'll play a song. What do you want to hear? And boom. So this was my first week on the air, and I had a little cartridge that I used. It's time for pick and play, and I would get somebody on the phone and ask them what they want to hear, and then I get ready to get the record set to go. And when we were ready, and I had the phone kind of on cue because when you're live in those days, you don't want anybody to get any nasty stuff on the radio. A listener is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm listening, and I'm not hearing anything at all. Everything's good. So whatever the song was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I got him on the phone and I said, blah, 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 Miss, Jilly or whatever her or his name was, what would you like to hear? And blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. And I had a button, and I had a button that said, no sooner said than done, 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 and the record would come on. So I'm all set, members, my first week. And I said, what would you like to hear? And I hear this phone get picked up like this in my headphones. I hear this other phone picked up, and I don't know where the pots are on the board so much. And she says, fuck you, you son of a bitch. Boom. And I hit no sooner said than done, 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 and into the record. Now, this is my first week, and now I'm thinking, oh shit, man, I'm gonna be out of work. I've had it. So anyway, I continue on with my show, and about 20 minutes later, I see Terrell Matheny pull up in front. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to be out of work. So anyway, he comes in and he says, how's it going, Wild Willie? I said, pretty good, kind of sheepishly. And he says, hey, I just got a suggestion for you. He says, perhaps you should pre-record those calls in the future.
Good lesson. Yeah. A hard lesson to learn because I can remember
Yeah,
having
right.
things like that happen where you just break out into a cold sweat while you're there.
Exactly. Like you figure you're going to get schmeiced on the spot, But anyway, that was good. And then Terrell, he was a program director. So I want to be a PD because I'm going back to Mike Joseph programming and that. I'm thinking this is what I would like to be. So I'm in there talking about programming and different things, and he finally, I can't remember how I got connected with him from him, but Terrell introduced me to the fellow who would become my real mentor in the radio business, Bert Sherwood. Bert had just taken the general manager's job over at WNHC in New Haven, Connecticut, and he was looking for a program director. And lo and behold, Terrell recommends me for the job. And I'm going, woo, this is pretty. Now that's pretty heavy. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
go from KLO to as a night jock to the program directing position in New Haven, Connecticut. And that's where I went. I went there in. Trying to remember the year I went there. I went there, I think, at WNHC. I went there in '67, and I stayed there through 1970. Now, this station was owned by Triangle Broadcasting. They owned WFIL in Philadelphia. They owned a station in Fresno, and it was owned by Walter Annenberg. And we did a great job, took that station to #1, and just owned New Haven. And we were promised the job in Philadelphia. However, what happened was Walter Annenberg sold all of those stations. So we weren't available for that particular situation anymore. So I made a few calls, and guess where I landed after that? WKLO, back there again, as the program
full circle.
director.
Yeah. Full circle.
Yeah, right. Yeah, full circle. Had a great manager. Ernie Goodrich was his name. It was one of Great Trails. They were a bunch of stations, Great Trail stations. They owned one in Columbus and et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, back there is the PD, and we just had a bang up time. When I was there with Terrell, WKLO was #1, far and away. By the time I got back there to KLO, and hired as the program director, Wacky had become the #1 station. So I had to completely rechange the operation and hire new jocks and put a whole new system together, new staff and everything, and contests and that. And we kind of moved the station at that time into what was called the Drake format. And KLO at that time, I I gave them the Drake format, and it took off like a bat out of hell, man. It just became the number one station again, and Wacky was back in the back. Um, so that was it from there.
So did
Um,
you from there? How did you get to? Was the next stop CKLW?
yeah, in reality it would be, but there was a little story there that I had done the job and I was looking to move on. And there was a job in Atlanta, Georgia, at a radio station called WGST. And I flew down there to Atlanta, and I was hired there. I even put a down payment on a rental house. Flew back to WKLO, and I walk in the door. This is honest to God truth. I walk into the house from the flight. Phone rings. It's Herb McCord.
CKLW.
Exactly. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to Atlanta, Georgia, or CKLW? Detroit, my hometown.
Hello.
So yeah,
Easy
well,
answer.
yeah, right. Hello. So yeah, he said. So he flew me up that following weekend. He flew me to Windsor and or Detroit, and then we met. And there's a quick interesting story here that they were looking for a program director, and I had met Herb McCord in New York. Herb McCord was the general manager at at an AC station in New York, and I can't remember the calls at the moment because I had applied for that job with Herb when I was at WNHC in New Haven, and he didn't hire me because I didn't have an AC background, but I got to know him. He got to know me. So what happened was Rosalie Tremblay, Herb McCord, and Paul Drew, who was the consultant at that time, they all wrote. Somebody suggested to write down three names of people that we should take a look at. All three had on the first position. They had Bill Hennes, Rosalie, Drew, and Herb McCord. And so he calls me and flies me into Windsor, and then the next thing I know, I'm the program director of CKLW. And of
Amazing.
course, sometimes things don't come as easy as they should, because by the time I got there, CKLW was mired in all of this Canadian content programming. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I
You're from
do.
Detroit.
Yeah, I remember
So,
that.
so by the time I got there, you had to play 29% Canadian content. That was either writers, I remember the writer, the singer, or the label. Three of those, two of the three had to be there to be Canadian content. So, and these, of course, a lot of these records that they were playing weren't hits or didn't make the main list. So we had to deal with that, and I was there about 2.5, almost 3 years at CKLW, and it was a really wonderful time. Just great. It was a lot of I was back in my hometown, except I was living in Windsor.
Yeah.
So I had to go over the bridge to Detroit and all of that. But I was a landed immigrant, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great staff. I mean, I brought in Gary Burbank,
Yeah.
unfortunately, who passed away this past year. Um, and we had brother Bill Gable do an afternoon drive, which it was just a real Pat Holiday for sure, Johnny Williams, and of course Max at night. When I got there, his uh, Max was at night, and they had come out with this what do you call it, the Super Max hair dryers. Do you remember the Super? You probably don't. You, like me, are losing hair, so maybe we don't.
I just
But they
shaved
came
this.
out
I
with a
I
Super Max.
actually have a very long head of hair. I just don't want to show it at the moment.
Very good. I like that.
Yeah,
But anyway, but I named his name was Max Kinkle,
yeah,
and
great
so
job.
I changed his name to Super Max. He was really disappointed that I wanted him to become Super Max instead of Max Kinkle on the air, but he did it, and he was great. He became People knew him everywhere on CKLW all the way to New York and wherever the signal went. We had a great engineer there too, Ed Budaba. He
Yeah,
went to WJR later, and then unfortunately he passed away a while ago. But he was terrific. What a great engineer. Uh, he even he wired the tunnel between Detroit and Windsor. So when you went through the tunnel, there was a sign you could listen to CKLW in the tunnel.
oh, that's pretty major.
Absolutely, that was
Yeah.
really cool. And then later on, like I said, he when he left there, he went to JR. But I had a great time at CKLW. And then I left and I went to a top 40 station in Indianapolis called WNDE, 1260 on the dial in Indianapolis. And as program director, not just of Windy in Indianapolis, it was WIND and WFBQ was the FM. It was owned by the Rahal brothers out of Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida. And I was the consultant for. I was the actual uh, programmer for Indianapolis and for WLCY in Tampa. So I was kind of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between Indianapolis and Philadelphia, and that was a lot of fun. I was one of the that kind of got me back to what I had learned from Mike Joseph about consulting. I was starting to work with other stations at the same time. I was a couple. So anyway, that was a really fun experience
How did
at
you
India.
how did you make the move from that to country radio? Because you did some pretty amazing things in the country world too.
Yeah, but that came later on. That came later on. Well, not real later on, but yeah, and the other thing that I did is I went to the station owned by John Tenaglia in Philadelphia. He was way ahead of his time. The call letters of the station was Wi-Fi.
Yeah, yeah.
pretty, pretty interesting. And then from there, I went to. I didn't. I went to actually. My mentor Bert Sherwood. He was at WIBG in Philadelphia, and I was having a little problems with the owner. Uh, he was tough to deal with, and so Bert said, "Well, why don't you come over here at IBG?" Which I did, which turned out to be one of the best moves that I ever made because he at at sorry about that. Sorry about that. Anyway, where was I here? Oh, at WIBG in Philadelphia with Bert briefly, and I got a phone call from, or he got a phone call from Jack Thayer, who was the head guy for NBC. He was the president of NBC Broadcasting, Jack Thayer, and he wanted Bert and I to drive up, not drive up. He said, I'll send you the limo and we'll pick you up tomorrow morning and bring you to 30 Rock and Rockefeller Center, the Black Rock. So we went up there and we thought that he was calling us to come up to take over WNBC. That was what we thought. We went up there and we had a nice meeting with him. It was great. Jack was a showman, and he talked with us for a while, probably about 3 hours. And then he left to go to the restroom, and Bert turns to me and he says, Willie, he says, I don't think we have the job. I said, what do you mean, Bert? He said, well, he hasn't mentioned a damn thing about it, about any job. So the next thing we know, he comes back from the restroom, slams the door, and he says, I've got it, the team concept. Bert says, what the hell do you mean, the team concept? He says, the station that you've been working with all along as a consultant, WMAQ in Chicago, he says, you and Willie are going to Chicago. Bob Pittman and Charlie Warner are coming to WNBC in New York. And that's how we wound up getting into the country business. And that was probably one of the, I don't want to say it was challenging, but it was really something that I really dug into. And I created a formula for that station that was really unique. It was you know how in radio you usually have, you'll have an A, B, C's, you'll have A, B, C's and different categories.
Mm-hmm.
You look like you're following me, but I mean, most stations have these categories like that. All right. So what I did, because I didn't want the station to sound very hillbilly-ish, what I did, I created a formula where we had A's that were pop country and B's that were country songs. Like, for example, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 would be an A, a pop country station song, and Merle Haggard would be B's.
Right.
You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. And the basic rule in all these categories were that you could always play two A's back to back. You could never play two B's back to back. So the station never sounded real country, but we played the country songs, country, but we balanced it with A's being pop and B's being country and all the different lists and categories, whether they were recurrents or whether they were currents or whether they were oldies.
Yeah.
And the situation was that actually Lee Sherwood was the program director for WMAQ. Pittman really didn't have an interest in country. He was dealing with KQX, the album rock station. And I had been working with, like I said, we were working with MAQ before, and Lee Sherwood was the guy that I was dealing with the music and, hey, what to do and this, that, and the other. So by the time we got there, we just took over what we had already been working on. And that was my introduction to country radio. I mean, to do country radio in Chicago for the first time and never having done country radio, that's a big challenge.
What year was that that you were doing that at MAQ?
77. I went to Chicago in 1977, and
Okay.
we were there through 1980. And after that, what had happened is, while we were there for those years, we had 1, 2, 3 presidents of the company. We had Jack Thayer, who hired us. Then we had Fred Silverstein. And Fred was the second guy. Each time you have a new boss, you have, as you know, you got to go in and present yourself to them and resell yourself to these people. And then the other person that was there, and I don't know, I can't pull his name up at the minute, but he took over the operation in New York, and we just got tired of reporting to the same guy, a different guy all the time. But we had a wonderful stay there. Stations did absolutely incredible. And at that point, Bert and I decided that we were going to open up our own consulting business. And we put together a whole operation in our two homes. And of course, looking back on it, most programming people would go to New York and try to get a consultancy with WMAQ since we had done such a fabulous job with it. I mean, when we got there, they were about a 4-share radio station, and when we were getting ready to leave, we had a full year of books that were in a 5.5. So I guess we didn't have the brains enough at that point in time to go in and pitch for the consultancy, continuing with MAQ when we opened up our consulting business. But we did. We opened up a consulting business, and we wound up getting a ton of radio stations, a ton of stations in top 40 and in country and classic hits. And we traveled all over the country. We went out and did KRLA in Los Angeles. That was a real treat to put that one together. KRLA at one time was the big kahuna out there.
Yeah.
Before KHJ and all that stuff. And so we that was the station that NBC had given to Bob Hope. They just gave the station
didn't know that.
Bob Hope. Yeah, that's a new piece of new info, right? And so we worked that, and we just it was great. We had a lot of fun out there, and then we developed. I got involved with a group up in the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota. Tons of stations up there. We did, and what we did, we went into these stations, and we did. Bert's situation with the consulting business, he would work with the management team of the station. I would work with the programmer, and so we were double teaming them in the consulting business.
Yeah.
And it was great. We had a great time. It was really good, and I did a lot of small market stations, like I said, in the Dakotas. It was the Inkstead chain, and they had great management people. And in fact, I'm still in touch with those guys today. They're down here for the winter in Florida, and they're from Minneapolis. But they're down in Florida now, and I'm going to go have probably my wife and I will have lunch with them in about a week or so. But so it was great, and I just enjoy the consulting business because you can help these stations become popular, clear up all the problems, and it was great. I still do, and I've got a couple of things pending right now on consulting work, and it's a lot of fun. The business has been very, very good to me.
You have a presence on the internet with a couple, maybe 3, I don't remember, stations. Is that sort of helping you to keep relevant and in touch with what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they got. I have today. This is on the internet. Today's hottesthits.com. Then I have today's hottest countryhits.com. And also I have today's hottest hip-hop hits.com.
Wow.
And we broadcast those regularly right out from here, and they're on the internet. And the reaction to the station, the listenership is really good. And we're all current based, by the way. It's not oldies. They're all, each of those stations are all current.
Today, yeah.
Yep, up to
So
date.
you've had this very lengthy, very broad career. Really, you've done it all, which is sort of old school, really, which is the way it
Right.
used to be. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm
Absolutely.
wondering what your feeling is about radio today. What is,
Well, I think radio is I'm trying to look for the word. It's kind of in a, we've always done this in the business, and the stations following stations, follow the leader type of thing. But I think the music's good, but the problem is that the presentations and the air talent on some of the stations are not as good as I would like to see, particularly in major markets. And you got people doing voice tracks, which is useless because they just ram through them. They don't have any feeling with the music. And usually you have a good morning show, and then the rest of the day is kind of a walkthrough. And it's a little depressing, and to see that radio has become that. When
yeah,
personalities, you know, you can be a good personality in a couple of quick, funny clips. Boom, boom, boom. You don't have to ramble on to be a good personality. You can
yeah,
have your own. Wild Willie had his personality, my personality, and Jack Armstrong had a personality on the air. Um, Mickey Shore had a personality on your great friend and mine, Lee Allen.
yeah,
He had a great personality on the air, and those. There's been some wonderful air talents, a talent that I have known and heard and listened to, and I know you've had some too at your stations.
yeah. What would you tell programmers or people who want to get into programming today about what they need uh, to be great?
Well, I think if you look for great talent or potential great talent, you take a listen to the people. They send in an air check. They send you something. You listen to it. Blah blah blah. If they've got a feel for what they're doing and they sound like they're having fun, the key is you want to have fun. You want the air talent to sound like they're having a good time playing whatever format music they're playing. And if they have that, then you can meld them a little bit this way, a little bit that way. And it depends how, like when I had Gary Burbank working for me, people would say, well, how do you critique him? I says, I really don't. I said, I mean, I don't sit down and have a critique meeting in the office necessarily, but I'll see him in the hallway, or he'll come in and I'll say, hey, I heard that bit with the woman and blah 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 that you had on the air. It was just great. And and that other thing you had with the fella just didn't have wasn't quite there. Giving him input on what to do and what not to do again, if you follow me.
Yeah, yeah. And what about as far as the rest of the station? Embracing the local market and trying to be relevant to the city you're
Oh, have
in.
to be local. You must be local to the market. You have to have things that relate to what's going on in the city that the programmer is in. The jocks must be touching things that make sense to the citizens of the community.
Yeah,
And if you do that, and you're playing the right music, and you've got the jocks tuned into the community, um, you're going to be a success.
I
You
remember
got to.
Ken Draper telling me that he wanted a station in Chicago, for example, that couldn't be played anywhere else, that it was
Mhm.
Chicago. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so I mean, I come from the old school as well, and the theater of the mind and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Uh, I feel like it's missing today, and I want to hear
Yep.
more of it, you know.
Yep.
So, well,
Exactly. You're exactly right.
congratulations on a career well lived. I thank you for taking all this time, and I know you didn't cover everything. I appreciate your stories and your remembrances, and I know there are many more because I've spent hours talking to you on the phone about some of that. But you know, this will be an unedited interview, and it'll be just all about you. And I appreciate very much your being here. So thank you,
I
Bill.
thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to explain the background of my career and everything that I did and things that I suggest that people should be doing in the future. Thank you, Jim.
Have a great one. Bye bye.
You too, my friend.